Hey everybody, and welcome to the newest episode of Icons and Experts, brought to you in partnership with my great friends over at the Extended Stay Lodging Association. Please check them out, esla.org. So every other week on Icons and Experts, we're either focusing on a person who's made unmistakable impact in the extended stay hotel industry, or researching and hanging out with the experts that are going to help you find success in this incredible hospitality category. Today, our person that we're going to be focused on is Kirk Kinsell, an incredible leader in the hotel business. Recently, he's had his own investment company, he's been attempting semi-retirement, but the fact of the matter is we all know him from back in his days at Loews and IHG, where he really helped craft a generation of leaders and helping them find success. So today, it's no surprise, we're going to be focusing on leadership, why it's so important, and then how that can help define your business. My co-host today is the incredible Doug Artusio, who is the founder of the Extended Stay Lodging Association. He joined us for the first episode with Mike Levin. That was a great one. I'd check it out. Make sure you check our entire database of shows. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Dellisart Hospitality. They're the leader in third-party management of extended stay hotels that have been at it for more than 22 years. And they're the only ones offering 3 key services, whether together or separately, either full management, remote sales support, or remote revenue management services. Do me a favor, check them out at Dellisart.com, Dellisart.com. So great to see you, Doug. This is our second show here on Experts and Icons and Experts together. Looking forward to working with you again, man.
Just great, Glenn. Thanks so very much for allowing me to participate. Looking forward to today's show. It's going to be amazing, wonderful guests that I know you'll introduce.
Yep.
So,
well, mostly the introduction's already been done. Our viewers have just watched that. So the good news is, Doug, they're already up to speed. So we can get up to speed together. Let's welcome the incredible Kirk Kinsell. Kirk, great to see you, friend. How are you today?
Doing very well. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday to you. As we're recording this, although you will be watching this on a Thursday, if you watch it on our release date, remember, twice a month, every other Thursday. So Kirk, great to see you. I came into the hospitality industry around 1996, and I probably met you shortly thereafter. But I feel like I really got to know you when you're Chief Development Officer of Americas with the company now known as IHG back in the early aughts and something like that. I've always admired and respected you. And honestly, I had no idea your career went back to such a place that you were involved early in extended stay and the hospitality industry in that kind of way.
Yeah. Well, it's great to be with you. And Doug, it's great to see you as well.
Thank you, Kurt.
I've known Doug for about 30 years as well. So it's been that's one of the things I want to talk a bit about is, making those connections and keeping them. But I go back, I really started in this space way back when, as a child, my grandfather was the general manager in hotels. My great-grandfather had built the Clift Hotel in San Francisco.
No way.
Family. And that my grandfather married into the family. I grew up in California on the beaches, wanted to be a doctor, but I paid attention to surfing and not organic chemistry. So I went off and got a career in hotels.
That's pretty cool. Well, good for you getting into the hotel business. And one of the things that we try to do here on Icons and Experts, brought to you by the great folks at ESLA, and my main show, No Vacancy, is try to get people excited about the hospitality industry. You have built such an incredible career in this business. And I would say, other than, in a trajectory that's very different than what people commonly think of as a hospitality career. I didn't even know what a chief development officer was when I first got to meet you, for example. So I find that really interesting. But before we get into where you are today and leadership and all that, I find it curious, Doug, that as we were preparing for this conversation, it really occurred to me that all roads and extended stay lead back to the incredible Jack DeBoer and Mike Levin.
Absolutely true. Those were obviously tumultuous days when opportunities were there and people with the foresight, the vision. Mike Levin obviously was involved. Kirk was involved back then as well. But
that's why he's here.
Worldwide.
Yeah.
I was not, but just being mentored by Mike and, knowing Kirk and all has just been a thrill for me and educational that you just can't put a price tag on. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
And Kirk may want to go into those days. They were different, and just opportunities for those that could, again, see out that far into the future were amazing.
Right. And that's kind of where I want to start, Kirk. How did you and the people that you were surrounded by really recognize that this would be a strong category when nobody else was seeing what everybody sees so clearly today?
Well, I think I was at Holiday Inn at the time. We were a Holiday Corporation, and we had once in a very short period had Residence Inn in our fold, but then we started Homewood Suites, and of course that got shipped off and sold to which today is Hilton. And we started Favorite Suites. And that's where I really got my teeth sunk into the extended stay area. And, like a lot of the things we've heard from others, is it was a white space that was underserved. We saw a lot of people on the road, doing training, doing construction work. People were displaced by natural events, whether it's a disaster or their own disaster of their making of their divorce.
Yeah.
They needed a place to stay for an extended period. And it got to a point to where we could engineer the cost of the construction. So it wasn't like paying, building for 2 rooms that you had to price out as one. We figured out how to do everything cost efficiently. And we saw a big market out there. Certainly what I learned from Mike at the time, Mike Levin, was, we used to just think about extended stay when we were selling it, standing on a rooftop and looking around, as far as you could see, and that was going to be your marketplace. That's who you were going to be serving. And then all of a sudden, we started to see that corporations started signing up, contracts for, contract rooms. So it was coming from someplace else, from big companies, and then lo and behold, it gets quote institutionalized, and here we are today.
Yeah, Doug.
Well, it's interesting that Kirk also brings up Mike Levin because to this day, Kirk and Mike work very closely together, and philanthropically on the aquarium in Atlanta, sit on the board together. So the hospitality business, which impresses me also, is a small unit of individuals that work together, like each other, respect each other, and keep relations going for 30 plus years in our business at the same time. And I hope to keep that as we maintain things well into the future.
Yeah, Doug, you guys have known each other for 30 plus years, which is pretty amazing. And it's kind of shocking to me. I've been in the business getting on 30 years now, and I've had some relationships from day one. That's one of the great reasons why the hospitality industry is so fantastic. And while we're talking about Mike Levin, I'd encourage all of you to check our first episode of Icons and Experts, which featured the incredible Mike Levin. And Doug, I did an interview with Jack DeBoer many, many years ago. Maybe I should dig that up out of the archives and see if we could run that.
It'd be really interesting.
All right.
In the 30 years that I've known Kirk, what has impressed me above all else is a quiet leadership that people jump aboard and want to produce and want to excel. And I know that we had talked about going into leadership, but I think Kirk has a unique personality to gain others to want to work hard, to want to impress, to want to succeed, that has brought all of that knowledge and their expertise as well into highly successful companies, highly successful brands that obviously started small, grew, and now are just major parts of our industry.
They're such well-known brands. It feels like they've always been there. And Kirk, it's hard to believe you were back in the genesis of a lot of these products. So please continue.
Well, one of the things that, I wanted to bring out, and you guys were talking about it, is about hospitality itself. As I reflect back, unlike so many other businesses, I call it a team sport, and whether you're at a unit level and you've got, you're a hotel level and you've got your team, whether it's the accounting, the front desk, the housekeeping team, it's a team sport. Everybody pulls together and works hard towards a common goal. If you're at the corporate office, it's a team sport. You're working across the organization with the finance department. You're working with the development guys. You're working with the brand people. At the industry level, it's a team sport. We get together as an industry and sit in a room and talk about this industry together. There's no secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And ESLA is a really good example of another, extension of the team sport. Everybody gets together, shares common knowledge, shares best practices, pulls other people up.
Yep.
And so I think, when you...
I will just say, and not in a collusion kind of way, government agencies out there, our industry is so cool because everybody can be friends with each other, yet go back and fight it out with your businesses, but still have the dignity and respect for each other, right?
Well, that's right. That's right. And, and I went to a hotel school program, and I'm still good friends with most of my graduating class, and they all work for the competition, and some of them I hired to work for me because they were good guys,
Yeah.
So
Totally, Kirk. I mean, part of any natural career is moving from company to company, taking advantages of opportunities. In our industry, although it seems big on the outside, it's pretty kind of small on the inside. And a lot of great executives I have known have cut their teeth at a lot of the major companies out there. So that's normal. That's the way it is. And it really gets you having to think about your leadership style, because you want to try to keep people in your fold, particularly since you're training them, but also give them opportunity to grow within whatever company you're leading at the time, right?
Yeah. I mean, my attitude about my job was I'm constantly trying to develop my talent. That's really was my number one job. I mean, even when you get to become CEO, you've got to worry about strategy, and you've got to be worried about the institutional markets maybe, but developing your talent is the number one job for all of us. And my personal style was helping people become the best version of themselves. That's like it takes me back to Mike Levin when Holiday Inn hired Mike. I got a notice on a Sunday night to show up Monday morning to meet the new guy. And the notice came from my chairman, and my chairman was very British, and there's no question in his mind that I was going to show up on Monday morning for the new guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I said to Brian, Brian, I apologize, but I planned on taking tomorrow off. I've got a commitment to my family. And he just kind of went, blah, 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 and I said, I'll be there Tuesday. I'm sure Mike will be there Tuesday.
Hey, hold on 1 second, though, because whatever year you're talking about, culture was very different then.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What you're saying in 2024, it's like, all right, I get it. But 1980, 90 something, not so much. Please continue.
Yeah, but, so fast forward to Tuesday, I show up on Tuesday to work, and this guy I meet, Mike Levin, for the very first time, and he's got a lot of history with Henry Silverman and the Days Inn and that group and HFS.
HFS, which went to become Sendon, which you all out there know as Wyndham now. Please continue.
Correct. So I walk into the office, and the first thing Mike does is test me, and he says, well, why weren't you here yesterday?
Right.
I said, well, I had a commitment to my family. I apologize. I'm here today. What can I do for you? He goes, no, well, why is family so important? He was like kind of putting it to me. And I said, well, family's everything, that a family comes first. And then he smiled, big smile. And he says, I really like you.
Oh, awesome.
We both hit it off. That's exactly how we started our relationship. And to this day, we're both part of each other's family.
Kirk, how did you get the guts to do something like that? Because when I was in my 20s, for example, probably way until I started this business, and now my boss, the biggest jerk of all, I would have been so scared to do something like that. Where did you get the guts to respect yourself and your family in order to make a move like that?
I don't know. I guess it's just part of my constitution. It's our families really do give up a lot for us to be in this business, because we're away from home all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I personally have spent time living abroad, and my family back here, just because of priorities where everybody was in their life. And So I just, I made a commitment early in order to keep my first and last wife happy. I needed to keep commitments to my family, and I think that's part of building integrity and part of trust. You make a commitment to them, you got to keep them. You can take withdrawals out of the emotional bank account later, because you sure will. You may not even know you did.
Right.
But she'll tell you. But make those deposits.
Yeah, I mean, I would say success is, in fact, a combination of confidence, integrity, and strength of knowledge of what you're doing that ultimately just pays benefits. And whether that's 30 years ago, 20 years ago, or today. And unfortunately, today we need more and more of that, because unfortunately, I think a lot of times people get away from it, and it's about the dollar. It's about the big dollar. And opportunity will always be there for people that work hard, that work together.
Yeah, I
what Kirk is talking about.
Belief in yourself is really important. And, my history goes back before Holiday Inn, working for Trammell Crow and Trammell Crow Hotel Company. And in fact, we started Wyndham Hotels, which eventually is now name changed, as you've mentioned.
And you're talking about the brand Wyndham as opposed to the big company.
Yeah, it's funny how
I try to give a lot of more details because there's so many young people that don't know what we lived through.
It's fun. It's fun to hotel trivia. Another story about that in the session. But Trammell Crow had, his biggest talent, I think, amongst many, was he had more confidence in you than you had in yourself. And he projected that, and you adopted then that confidence. And that's probably what helped me in my meeting with Mike. Yeah.
That's excellent.
But you reminded me of another great leader, who's another great guy in the extended stay space, which was John Q. Hammonds.
Oh my God. I was just thinking about him. I was having a little trouble bringing back his name, but he was one of the early big time developers. And if I recall correctly, was basically made Embassy Suites what it is today by heavy investments in that. So please continue. Yeah,
that's right. So we used to, I'd take about 2 or 3 of my guys with me, and we go over to Springfield, Missouri to see John. He was a big Holiday Inn customer at the time. And we'd go over there and we'd play hotel trivia with him, and it would be him versus about, 6 of us. And he would say, okay, name the 3 hotels on the corner of Main and I don't know, and Springfield Street. And he would have every hotel on every corner everywhere. Our job was to try to outmatch him. It was fun.
I agree completely. My conversations with him, although I never called him John, I always called him Mr. Hammonds, because he was such a respected person.
Yeah. That's how I feel about David Cog. I can't just call him David. The former, Best Western. Yeah.
So Mr. Hammonds knew every single street corner, and you couldn't stump him. And I was in franchise sales at the time when I got to know him, and he knew my territories better than I did. And although embarrassing, it's understandable, because he was such an interesting and knowledgeable guy and put every ounce of his effort into building his organization. He had 35 IHG properties back in the early 90s, probably 130 properties at the time in total. Pretty amazing individual, as Kirk says, and a simple but amazing person. He would never beat his chest, a simple, but what a great leader.
He was a lot like Jack DeBoer in that way. And, John Q. Hammonds, I think, I don't know if your listeners know about this, what he did, his strength came from, his market knowledge, as Doug just mentioned. He knew, markets on the back of his hand. He would go to an airport with a boarding pass, because back then you had to buy a ticket, and it had a boarding pass attached to it. And he would go to the airport with 3 or 4 different flights on it. And depending upon when he landed, the next flight that was leaving was the one he pulled out and went to, because he didn't want to waste any time waiting in the airport to be able to get to the next market. And he wore tennis shoes too. He constantly wore tennis shoes because he was on the run.
Yeah.
So, you pick up these things as a young person, and you realize there's no substitute for your knowledge of your market. Just none,
He
and
bought
as a
the land.
developer, that was what, I think got me into some of the roles that I was able to ascend to, because I constantly was just, I was eating up as much travel as I could to learn as much as I could about the markets that were out there.
Yeah, Doug?
Well, I was just going to say, he bought the land at the Denver airport 8 years before they started construction. And it blew my mind. I sold him a license at the time on then was absolutely prairie. And
yeah,
it was amazing because he just knew. It was instinctive for him. But again, this is
all about. I definitely want to go back to Kirk, but I got to ask.
No.
So he bought the land before the city said they were moving the airport specifically to that location?
You got it.
That's correct.
I mean, it's...
Yeah.
Great guy.
Kirk, bringing it back to you. It sounds like you had a lot of great leaders in your life, and these leaders gave you the confidence and helped you build your skills in order to be able to get incredible positions like, being president of Loews hotels, for example, and then running your own investment group and, and your earlier achievements as well. So my guess is now you're at that part of your career where you trying to synthesize everything that you learned from your leaders to be a great leader for yourself. So what were some of the lessons that you took away from all of those people that guided you? And how does that reflect in the way that you became an individual and then want to give back to the next generation?
Yeah. Well, we've touched on some of it. I mean, one of the things that I really feel strongly about that people don't spend the time in doing, and that is building those connections and building and investing in those relationships.
Right.
Those will serve you throughout your career. I think another important factor is, embracing the culture that you're in, and driving behaviors. It's behaviors that are key. People today are so intent on getting results so quickly that they become frustrated, or they become, they get distracted.
Right. There's too much desire for instant gratification and not enough focus on the long.
Exactly. And it's the behavior, which is the most important thing to learn. If you get the behavior right, the results will come. And like when I used to lead a sales organization when I was with Doug, I would say to some guys would be able to sign a number of deals in a quarter. Some guys would sign half the number of deals in a quarter, and they would be really dismayed. And I would say, no, let's look at what you're doing. And are you doing all the things you need to be doing, in the right way? And if you're doing those things, the results will come. And I think that's just so true. So it's kind of like believing is seeing, a lot of people want to do the opposite. I believe it's believing is seeing.
It's having a vision and then bringing it to actuating it. Yeah.
Sure. I can't help myself. Kirk led the best sales team on the planet. Steve Romanello.
I know that.
Your brothers.
Yep, of course.
David Pepper.
Yep.
I mean, people that are legends, in what they do quietly, and did do 2, 3, 4 times as much as anybody else within the same period of time, and had fun along the way. So everything that Kirk is saying, but, to do your job, but make it fun too. Enjoy yourselves. Enjoy those that you work with. There's a certain line, but at the end of the day, you want to work with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kirk, one of the things that I found was going specifically to what you're talking about with sales is some sales happen right away. Some sales take 10 years, and there's a panoply of things in between. So I think it's really hard when we're so focused on instant gratification, like a lot of younger people are. And that's a bigger conversation as to why that is. But the truth behind it is, if you're out there and you're making relationships and you set things up, everything just seems to fall into the right place. When I don't think a deal's going to come through, the one thing I've been talking to somebody for 5 years suddenly will pop out of nowhere, right?
Yeah,
so just because you're not signing a deal in that quarter doesn't mean stuff's not moving forward. Kirk.
I've got a perfect example. I was at a ULI conference, and ULI is now morphed a bit, but it's a conference of real estate people in the hospitality sector. And we were in San Antonio, standing on one of the little bridges over the water, talking to Mike DePady. And at the time, Mike was at Kimpton. And this was, this is probably at least 5 years, if not 8 years, before I introduced Mike DePatie to Richard Solomons, and we bought Kimpton at IHG.
Right.
And the conversation I had then was, if ever, you guys are going to be doing something with this brand, we were be interested. So the seed was set,
Yeah. Yeah. And then at the right time, things happen. And it's really interesting how you have to, set things up in order to do that. And what you said, I want to go back real quick, because you said it's about forming those relationships. How do you think about creating those relationships and then fostering them over a long period of time? For me, it's being on the road all the time, having face-to-face contact with these people, maybe sometimes having a cocktail with them or a meal, or just great eye contact. What's been your strategy?
Well, certainly the conferences are set up to be supportive, and you need to work those conferences. Some of those conferences are it's hard work to go into a room with 3,000 other people. They all, it looks like a testosterone bowl. But it's important. That's one. I'd say the other thing is you can do it yourself at your place of work. Go across and go make friends with the head of HR. When you're a developer, the HR person is only there to be able to approve your compensation plan to pay the big bonuses. Otherwise, get out of my way. I want to go off and do my deals.
Yeah.
Or the brand person is only there to put up more strict standards, to kill my deals. So you got to go spend time working those relationships, get to know those people, get to understand what their challenges are and help them with their challenges, and you'll be surprised. I call it working the T, not the I, which is up and down. We tend to, particularly as developers, we tend to work with people and hang out with people like ourselves.
Also,
really got to go left and right.
You
the T is, I like to say, the working the T also stands for trust. So that's a way to remember it.
Yeah. I was just thinking when you were talking about making deposits with your family, it's the same thing, creating goodwill with all the folks that surround you with. Great point, though, by trying to hang out with people that are different than you, right?
Right.
I mean, I grew up in a very homogenous kind of neighborhood, and I tend to hang out with guys that are like me because we have similar backgrounds and stuff like that. But if you really want to develop your career over time, and I think, Kirk, younger people are better at this because there's more diversity within the marketplace to begin with now than when we were younger. I think that's one thing. You got to always look for those different people that have your values, but may be a little bit different from you culturally.
Yeah, I think young people are better at it, but again, they don't know what they don't know. And so our jobs, where we are in our careers now, what I do with my time, I'm retired for the most part. I do a dabble in some investments. I advise a few CEOs. I do some board work. But I see my job still as trying to develop talent. And, so they don't know what they don't know. So it's really key to open up doors for people.
Yeah. Do you feel that younger people today are a little bit more reticent to get good feedback and are maybe a little bit defensive? I mean, I was defensive early on in my career when I was younger. So I don't know if it's an issue of being young and insecure, or it's more of a cultural shift. How do you see that?
Well, first thing is feedback is a gift. That's how I see it. And it's funny you bring up the word feedback, and because I now am at a point where people are sending me a note to say, hey, I had this epiphany the other day, and I heard you in my ear, and all I heard was feedback is a gift. Feedback is a gift. I used to say that all the time, and I would say, you can't return it for store credit. You got to do something with it. And the most powerful thing you can do in a relationship is to be able to honor that other person who gave you that feedback, and say, well, help me unpack that. Help me, deal with what it is. Learn from it, and then be seen doing something with it. And you'll be amazed how that transforms that relationship, and how that person then will look to you, as opposed to, gave you negative feedback or something.
How do we accept feedback graciously and not take it personally?
Yeah, well, it just is it's a thank you. I think the easiest way to accept feedback, I think emotionally, is just to repeat what you heard. Repeat what you heard, because that then affirms to the other person that you heard them. Okay. And then secondly, are you listening? Do something with it. I'll smile here, and Doug will smile as well. We've had a lot of conversation with franchisees over the days when the franchisee didn't want to hear what we had to say. And
by the way, those conversations are still happening, Kirk. Yeah.
And vice versa. They would tell me a lot of things I'd agree. Well, the most powerful thing I found in my relationships with those franchisees was just repeating what they said. Just repeat it. Right. I'm maybe not doing anything with it. I tried to do something with it. Mm-hmm. But if you just repeat what you hear, I think helps lessen the kind of the emotional load that you get when you get that feedback that you just didn't want to hear.
Yeah.
Right. So, well, and Mike Levin said the same thing, that he saw the franchisees as guests.
Yeah.
Okay. So listening to them, providing and creating an organization that serves them and yet serves the company at the same time.
Yeah. Well, the best franchise companies, the best brands out there are stronger because of their franchisee and the feedback that they've gotten and the ideas 100%. That they've gotten, all those kinds of things. Sure. When we were kind of, get into more modern strategy, where the big focus was on the guest, and everybody right. wanted to, and then and take care of your employees. I mean, that's Mike's thought, and I agree with that. But that franchisee was a critical customer, and so I looked at that franchisee as important as my guest as a customer, but he was a critical customer. He was somebody who, I could learn from, and vice versa. And together we could strengthen our, Well, I think it was Mike who actually said we're in business for ourselves, but not by ourselves. That's kind of the adage of franchising.
Yep. Yeah. I absolutely love that. You're making so many great points. Could you just share a little bit before we wrap up any advice that you might have for younger people about how to really enmesh themselves in an environment and learn and figure out how to get to the next level like you did?
Well, yeah, I guess I'm going to reflect back on my career. When I went to hotel school, mm-hmm. I thought I was going to be a general manager. And I walked into that environment and found out that there were consultants, there were advisors, there were suppliers, there were,
people in brands, right?
There were brands, there were real estate development companies. Yeah. I think that the key thing is for a young person is to step back, try to take as wide a view as possible, and actually try on a few different experiences and see what you really like. Not all of us are geared to, deal with a guest every day,
Right.
Some of us might enjoy numbers better, or might enjoy, a strategy, or whatever the case might be. Take a broader view, experience a few things for yourself, learn, be a sponge and try to take on and learn as much as you can about the industry and how it all pieced together. And I think what you guys have done a great job of with these podcasts is the history. Go back and understand the history of how these things have all transpired and emerged. I mean, history was just not started yesterday. It's a lot of young people think,
It's funny. One of my producers actually, we joke about it on our Comedy Focus Friday Night Audit show, but he's like, he was born in 87 and doesn't want to know anything that happened before.
Right. Sometimes, I remember at Holiday Inn, we used to say, we've forgotten more than most people knew.
Right.
And sometimes people would come up and say, well, we tried that before. And I said, well, we tried it before, but in this environment at that time with these brands, let's think about how it might fit in today's environment with these other brands or these franchisees or these markets. Yeah.
Well,
So,
and bringing this back to the extended stay arena, there's not a brand or a subsegment of the industry that needs team more than the front office, the sales area, because it's all about the guest. It's understanding the guest. It's this rooftop marketing that Kirk had mentioned earlier. Get to know your community, be part of the community.
right.
And ultimately, it pays incredible business benefits, but you have to understand people, you have to understand your market, and you have to apply all of the leadership aspects that Kirk's been speaking about. And by doing that, your extended stay, levels are just off the map, because it's true. Back then, the secret to some is now the secret to none.
Yeah.
But it still needs to be operated properly along with the teamwork aspects that Kirk's been talking about. And doing
That's right.
that, extended stay can just be an amazing investment for everyone.
Yeah, when you think about it at the hotel level, Doug, extended stay is almost the superior form of hospitality because you have that opportunity to engage with that guest over a multi-day stay. And sometimes it's a multi-week stay. Sometimes they don't check out.
Yeah.
Love that.
And whereas in the other hotel businesses, like
It's transactional.
Express, I love the brand Holiday Inn Express, but we talk about the guest as a ghost. They come and they go without ever seeing them. But in the extended stay, you're there and you have an opportunity to influence their day, their life, their stay, and their return. And that's really critical that you recognize that, and the teams have that opportunity to really perform.
That is absolutely fantastic. All right. One last piece of advice that you could give to our people, and this time I'd like you to focus on career discipline and being able to focus on what you need to get accomplished in order to be successful at that while preparing for the next level.
Well, I think it's it kind of comes back to that level of trust and integrity, and it's keeping your commitments not just to the work, but it's that family relationship, it's that friend relationship, it's that community relationship. I think people are a stronger version of themselves when they have found a way to balance all of that. I used to talk to my team about the fact that it's really interesting that at work, we reforecast the business, sometimes daily, but quarterly. And when you come home, you sit around the dining room table, the kitchen table, you never talk about a reforecast of the family and where we're going for the next 3 months.
Right.
Bring those tools home.
That is so insightful.
We talk about forgiveness. We talk about love. We talk about gratitude. Well, bring that to work. Bring your forgiveness. Bring your love. Bring your gratitude to work. And I think that those things mesh really nicely.
Beautiful.
That's amazing.
Doug, any final thoughts before we let this gentleman go?
No, I'm just kind of taking it all in. I have a lot to think about after today's podcast about my own business, frankly, and how my teams are working, whether it's my executive team or the individual properties, because I'm not living up to everything that we can. And I see that, but to hear it from someone that I so greatly respect makes me think, okay, how do I turn this back into a daily function of family, work, the people that we work with? So, Kirk, thank you. From my company standpoint, for me personally, it's eye-opening to me again, as always, anytime we chat.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we really appreciate everyone being here today. And I really appreciate all of you for watching this great conversation today. Remember, in hospitality, no matter what you love, no matter what your passion is, we've got it in this business. It's just a matter of finding what it is that you want to do. The other thing I learned today is, boy, I wish I had Kirk as my boss way back in the day. That would have been great, because I would have learned so much more, and I probably would have found a different type of career path that was completely unexpected because of those leadership skills. Hey, please be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. Text the word hotel to 66866 to get this episode and every new episode of ESLA's Icons and Experts as they are released. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out that first episode we did with Mike Levin. It's very relevant to today's conversation. Thanks so much, and we'll see you later.